and welcome to this, probably your first presentations here at UCLA about the new AP US and AP World History courses. Now, I can imagine right now that you are saying the same thing I was saying when I found out about what they were doing with these courses. We have been told now for the last 3 years by College Board and Advanced Placement that there were not going to be any more changes. And I remember having taught this course for the last few years that I promised my teachers who've been in this course, don't worry, they're not doing any more changes. And they're doing more changes. So I can imagine right now as you're taking this course that the last thing you wanted to have to think about on your summer vacation was a whole new set of changes that were going to take place. Well, I'm going to give you 3 reasons, I think, why these changes actually are going to make our lives easier and better within advanced placement. And I'm going to see if I can convince you of that being the case. So as you probably know, College Board just released something called the CED, or the Course and Exam Description. So this is a fancy way of just replacing what we used to call the framework. So what are these 3 reasons that might be a good way to talk about the course, exam, and description? Well, let me go through these really quick. Number 1, the first big reason why I think this is going to be so helpful is that we are actually given a really organized way to teach the class. And don't get me wrong, you are welcome to teach this class any way that has worked for you in the last several years. You do not have to adopt the way they're doing it in the course, exam, and description. But here's the great news. The guys who established the course and exam description, they started teaching AP World and AP US not too long ago. And when they came in, they were given what most of us were given. You might remember that little acorn book, where we were given that book that was just an outline of the class, and then you would sit down with it over summer and you would say, wait a second, this is just an outline of what we're supposed to teach. It doesn't tell us how to scope and sequence the skills. It doesn't tell us where the curriculum ought to be taught. And in many cases, the curriculum in the Acorn book didn't even match up with our textbooks. So the guys who established the course and exam description, they kind of sat down and they did an outline, sequencing of skills, sequencing of curriculum, making sure it matched with the textbooks, making sure this was an organized class. And their purpose, their vision, was that if you handed this CED to a first-year teacher in advanced placement, they would be able to teach the class. So for those of us who are veteran teachers of the class, we have something to look at to check ourselves and see if there's anything we want to change. For those who are newer teachers in the class, you now have an outline to the class. Which brings up the second reason I'm going to say that this CED is so helpful. One of the things they've done in the CED is to actually provide us with illustrative examples. They've provided us with examples of tools we can use for research. And they've also provided us with some suggested activities at the end of every single unit. Now again, you can teach the class any way you want, but this kind of gives you a reservoir to go to in order to use for the class. So here's my number 3 as to why I think this is so helpful in teaching the class. The way that they've structured the class now is thematic, it's skills-based, and now they've given us the big illustrative examples that are sequenced as far as skills go, resources, and ideas. This means we get to do what we really like to do in history, and that is ask probing questions. I mean, we don't really teach this class for the sake of the test at the end of the year. That test is really important, but let's be honest. We love to teach history because it's interesting, it's engaging, and it gets us to ask the really big questions about human societies all across the world for AP World, and here in AP US, what's been changing and remaining the same for US history. So having said that, what I want to do for the rest of this video is walk you through the CED and show you where all these resources are and how to read the CED. So here's the cover of the new CED that is effective fall of 2019, and I put on the link for you if you would like to go and get it at AP Central. It's pretty easy to find. Just go ahead and type in AP World History CED, or you can use the link that I have provided here. So the very first thing I want to point out are the changes that have happened in the units. You can find this on page 18 of your course exam and description. So what they've done here is they've laid out that we now have 9 units, not the old 6 units that we used to have in AP World History. You can also see the chronological periods that these units cover, and you will see the exam weighting. Now I know this is extremely important because of the change that's taken place this year for AP World History by starting off in the year 1200 CE. And by the end of this presentation, I'll talk about some of the reasons we might look to as to why 1200 CE is a good date to think about. So the next important page is going to be on page 21. And the reason why is that this is going to help to give an overview of the spiraling of the themes that you can teach and how those are going to then correlate with the different units. So you can see how the themes connect under different units with these checklists. So the next part is really important, and you can find it on page 22. It's the course at a glance. Basically what these pages are your chance to see the historical thinking skills, the themes, and then the units. And what are really important about these units that you'll see is that they're scoped and scaled for the skills. For example, at the bottom of every one of these units, you'll see that historical argumentation is the final skill. Why? Because it's the most difficult to teach and the most difficult for the students to learn. And that's the point of the course at a glance, scoping and sequencing the skills. Another opportunity we have at the end of each unit is that we are provided with sample instructional activities that we might be able to use with our students. So I know we all have great activities that we do with our students, but this just gives us another opportunity to see the great ideas that are out there that we might use in our class. One teacher recently commented that when you get in a rut, this is such a great place to go to just come up with some new ideas. Finally, there are the elements of the unit. So I'm going to look at one of these examples on page 39, but you can find these throughout the CED. CED provides for you the thematic focus, and then after that the specific learning objective. And then finally, for a third thing, the link to the key concepts. Now, a quick note on the key concepts. The purpose of the key concepts now is just to give us an organizational template that goes back to the old framework. So you might notice, and some teachers have, that the key concepts are out of order, and that's because this really was not meant to be a continuation of the key concepts, but rather just a way for us to reference what we already knew from the key concepts. And finally, I know the big question on everybody's mind, why 1200 CE? So the reason why 1200 CE seems to be a really good starting point is because of the changes and continuities that happen in that century, like the Black Plague, the Mongols, the continuation of land-based empires, and the huge new innovations with the trade interactions. This is such an exciting period that really opens us up to the early modern period and what happens after. Okay, so what's next? I know as a teacher, whenever I go and do professional development, I always want something concrete to come out of it that I can use inside of the classroom. And my hope is that's going to be the case for you over this summer. So what I've created is a Google Team Drive. Every week when we have assignments, we're going to post it there, and that way you can get points for the class. But even more importantly, all of our assignments will be public. And that's going to allow all the teachers to then learn from one another and to take things that will help them next year with their students. I know this class is full of teachers with collective wisdom. Whether you're a new teacher to AP or a veteran teacher, we all bring great ideas to this class. I know every summer I get to learn from the teachers that I work with, and I hope the same is going to be true for you. So we're going to go ahead and do these assignments, post them to the Google Team Drive, and then my hope is you can use them next year with your students in the classroom. Thanks so much, and I'm looking forward to talking to you during this week.